Are millions of Brits racist? Or do they have legitimate concerns that aren't being listened to? Trigger warning. If you're overly sensitive, don't like hearing differences of opinion, or are generally a bit of a souffle, best to close the video now. This video is full of different perspectives, thoughts to challenge your current preconception of the world, and plenty of things to make you angry if you're of that persuasion. I don't want to step on anyone's toes who hasn't willingly volunteered for it, so this is your warning to get out while you still can. Okay, on with the video. The past few days have been pretty wild. Charlie Kirk was murdered for his political opinions, and the UK had its largest free speech demonstration in history. On top of that, we have conservatives now supporting cancel culture, didn't see that one coming, and tension across society ramping up like never before. After reading several posts on social media and seeing the way terms like far-right racist and Nazi continue to be thrown around, I thought I'd throw my hat in the ring and share my thoughts on what's happening. I want to first state that this is not a political channel. It's a channel focused on human development and potential. I try not to get too involved in the back and forth of politics these days, as I see the result it has on people, including myself, when we get too close to the issues at hand. I believe that the only way to win the game is to not play it in the first place, to not buy in wholeheartedly to any narrative being propagated, whether left or right, and to think for yourself, instead of absorbing one-size doctrine without question. You can't do that when you're too involved in what's going on. As the saying goes, if you don't watch the news, you're uninformed, and if you do, you're misinformed. I also don't claim to be unbiased. I definitely sit to the right of the political spectrum as it's drawn up today. And while I take issue with some of the things on the right today, I do see what's happening on the left to be far more corrosive to society as it currently stands. So if that's a turn-off for you, by all means, close the video now. But please do me a favor first and like and subscribe for more content you can get angry at. It really helps the channel grow. Politicians are great at creating problems, but terrible at fixing them. So I don't think focusing on who will be the next prime minister or president has much effect in the long run. These guys are much the same by the time they get to office, due to the corrosive game they have to play in order to get there, and the level of individual who is willing to play that game. So it's really about picking who's going to make the situation less worse, rather than who's going to make things actually better. That being said, I do think that we as individuals have immense power in the things that we do every day and in the way that we interact both with ourselves and with others. And it's because of this that I want to make this video. If we can get to truly see each other as people again, instead of through the political lens of left or right and all the baggage that goes along with those terms, then maybe we have a chance of reconnecting and taking away the power from those out there who profit from our constant bickering and conflict. It's an attempt to take some of the steam out of the pressure cooker and get back to a more balanced perspective on things where we can talk with each other rather than bark at each other like dogs on opposite sides of the fence. This video is that attempt. Expect to learn what the far right really means in today's world, what they stand for and why, as well as the legitimate concerns of the left. If I get this video right, I'll probably piss you off no matter what side you're on politically. And don't we all just love to get angry on the internet? So you're in for a good time. Now be sure to let me know what you think of me in the comments below. It's always a joy hearing from the best specimens the internet has to offer. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to start with you on the left. Yes, you. I see you. I'm doing this because I figure you won't stick around for long if I start rationalizing the right's point of view. Those of you who fall further to the right of the divide, however, are more likely to stick around to hear someone else's point of view. Now, don't take that little dig too seriously if you're a lefty. I'm only messing with you. What do the left want? I'm going to be as generous as I can and steelman their argument. If I get anything wrong, please feel free to correct me in the comments. I'm not perfect, and I'm not a mind reader. I'm simply doing my best to relay what I've understood from the more reasonable individuals who still consider themselves liberals. The left want to create a society where everyone is treated equally. They want compassion to be the highest virtue, and for everyone to simply get along without racism, sexism, or hate. They want people to be able to freely express themselves any way they wish, to be free to take on any identity they wish, and to live without fear of criticism, condemnation, or judgment. In essence, they want a fair and equal society. It's a pretty noble aim, if you ask me. Of course, there are some issues with the execution of these ideas, but we'll get into those later in the video. The far right, on the other hand, or as some less thoughtful individuals like to call them, the Nazis, who are they and what do they really want? You might be surprised to hear this if you're of a particular political persuasion, but the overwhelming majority of people who are called far right these days are in fact quite nice human beings, and not at all raging racists, Nazis, or any other short-sighted slur that's hurled their way. I would know. I'm considered one of them. Now, before you start angrily writing in the comments about a particular comment you saw or heard from a friend of a friend about some racist remark made by someone somewhere, let me first acknowledge that yes, racist people do exist. Hateful people do exist. Hate is a human emotion that we all experience from time to time, and yes, some people experience more of it or in ways that are different to the ways you experience hatred. I'm not saying that these people don't exist. What I am saying is that painting half the population, or possibly even more these days, as hateful because you don't like their views is not a very complex way of thinking. In order to help you better understand the views of these supposedly hateful people, let me share with you what most people on the far right actually want. By the way, if you've made it this far, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel, as well as share this video with anyone else you think might be outraged by these opinions. Okay, most people on the right believe in freedom of speech. Although ironically, in the past few days, many on the right have decided that cancel culture is great, following Jimmy Kimmel's cancellation. And those on the left who have been trying to cancel people for years for hurty words are now free speech advocates. Why does free speech matter? Well, the more radical leftists would claim it's so that hate can be spread throughout the world, but that's not a very kind or generous way of viewing those you disagree with. See the irony there? The right believes that the fundamental guardrail keeping us from turning to real violence, not the words of violence kind, is the open exchange of ideas. It's through this exchange, one that Charlie Kirk fundamentally believed in, that we figure out what is true and, importantly, what is practical to implement. This means sharing ideas even if you don't agree with them. In fact, the far right, actually just anyone other than the radical left, believes that you can discuss an idea without it meaning you agree with it, because that idea isn't their identity. It's just an idea. The right wants to feel seen and heard, just like the left. They feel that the media and political establishment has ignored them for too long, while issues they have been talking about for years continue to grow seemingly unnoticed by those on the political left. What are those issues? Well, illegal immigration is a big one in the UK and in places like Germany. This is a funny one because it really shouldn't be an issue. We're not talking about people who apply to enter the country, come over, integrate, and contribute to society in a meaningful way, while accepting and incorporating the values of the country they've joined. No, we're talking about people who aren't allowed to be in the country. That really should be the end of the issue, but for some reason, it's not. For some reason, in the UK, no matter which government is in place, there is the continued acceptance of people breaking the law. Now, regardless of the numbers, as they're either exaggerated or downplayed, depending on which side you sit on, the fact is that at the very least, some of these people are committing horrible crimes in a country that is paying for them to be there, despite them breaking the law by doing so. This number should be zero. The right wants to stop paying to facilitate these violent crimes committed against the most vulnerable of society by people here illegally. That also seems like a pretty reasonable request. In the UK, where we've just had the largest pro-Britain march in history, a major concern is upholding British values and culture. You could say that these are Western values, and a similar shared concern is held by conservatives across the pond in the US and places like Germany and Australia. Why is this important? Well, in order to have a cohesive society, that is to say, in order for everyone to get along, we all need to believe in the same values. Think of it this way. For the game of society to be played, we all need to agree on the rules. What is currently happening is that society no longer agrees on the rules, and this is causing fractures to appear. A big part of this is an outside influence from people from other cultures with different values, values that don't necessarily coincide with Western ones. The inevitable outcome is conflict. The right recognizes this taking place, have identified at the very least one of the causes, and wants to fix it. The left, who wants everyone to just get along and believes we don't need this shared set of values, believes that all the right is trying to do is discriminate and be hateful. But this isn't the case for the majority of people on the right. They simply want society to function smoothly and understand that there is a compromise and sacrifice to be made. That sacrifice is we can't let everyone into a country if it destabilizes that country. That's why we have borders and a set of criteria to allow people in. That's not hate, that's just being real. We want to help, but not to our own detriment. When it comes to what the reasonable people on the left and the right really want, it's pretty similar. The real difference lies in the practical implementation. How do you get to the desired outcome, and what do you sacrifice? The left, as I see it, believes more in utopian thinking. They believe that we can have our cake and eat it too, that everything is possible without sacrifice. The right has a more rational approach, which to anyone highly empathetic can appear cruel or cold at times. The thing to remember here is we want pretty much the same things. We just don't agree on the methods on how to get it. That's why we need to talk about them. And calling each other names or silencing opinions we don't like doesn't help. If you can't defend your position with logic and reason, then it isn't a tenable position for society to hold. Now that might sound harsh because you care deeply about everyone and want everyone to be treated equally, but unfortunately, it's just how it is. As Thomas Sowell said, there are no solutions, only compromises. And in a world where keeping a country unified is fundamental to everything else, the compromise is that we can't allow any old person in. And we must uphold the unifying values of the country. In the West, those values are based on a Christian ethos, which, by the way, is a big reason why people from Islamic countries tend to have a much harder time integrating. And before you get your knickers in a twist, I'm not saying they can't or don't integrate. I'm saying that when issues arise, it's usually due to a conflict in fundamental value differences between Christian and Islamic doctrines. So I stated at the beginning I wanted to help bring people back to the center, to a more rational way of thinking and communicating. Here's the way I see this best taking effect. If you're someone on the left who sees the march in London as being a march of racism, a good question to ask yourself is it rational to believe that there are millions of raging racists in this country whose only reason for getting out and marching in solidarity with one another is to spread that racism? Have I spoken to anyone who supports British patriotism? And what are their reasons for the support? Or have I just listened to the opinions of third parties like the BBC and The Guardian? Here's a question to ask yourself no matter what side of the fence you're sitting on. If I were to ascribe the best intent to the person on the other side of the political divide as to why they believe what they believe, what would that be? Try giving them the benefit of the doubt. You don't need to agree with their argument, but you should at least understand it. We may not all agree on the best solution moving forward, but I do believe that most of us want the same outcomes. We all want to live in a world that affords us the most freedom, abundance, and joy. If we can agree on that, maybe then we can start nailing down the details. But we won't get there as long as we're calling each other names and pretending everyone is a Nazi. Let's lower the volume a bit and start communicating with each other as if we were people again. Because after all, that's what we are. Okay, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't already, like the video and subscribe for more content on how to start creating more impact in your own life. And also because I need the subscribers. My big dreams aren't going to pay for themselves. All right, until next time, peace.